Welcome back, Doomtown fans, to part 2 of my Immovable Object Unstoppable Force review. In this section, we're going to be looking at the new spellcasting faction, the Eagle Wardens. We're going to start out with their new outfit card, which is called Eagle Wardens. It's an 18 with 3 income. It has Noon Boot. Boot your dude at the town square to draw 2 cards. If that dude has at least 2 influence, draw 1 additional card, discard or ace a card in your hand. In some of my other reviews, I've talked about how difficult it is to draw cards in Doomtown. There aren't really that many card effects that let us draw or filter through cards, so something like this outfit power is certainly going to be strong. Being able to just get 2 more cards, even if you have to discard or ace one of them. And the acing thing, that's going to be kind of nice if you draw kind of a superfluous copy of something or just some card that isn't very good in your matchup. You'll be able to ace that thing and not have to worry about it when you reshuffle. I could also see a strategy where you focus on using the acing thing as much as possible to thin out cards that don't match a strong draw structure. So like something like Dead Man's Hand or a Straight Flush would be easier to get over time if you consistently aced cards that didn't match that structure. Now you do have to boot a dude in the town square to get these cards. That's certainly proved difficult with like the original Sloan Gang power or even to a lesser extent the Oddities of Nature. It can be difficult to control and sustain the town square and be able to use your outfit power. Now, how often are you going to want to boot a 2-influence dude in the town square? I'm not so sure. But we're going to see some cards later on that are going to maybe influence our ability to control the town square or give us additional dudes that are kind of more disposable that could potentially have 2 influence. Since we're taking this box a little out of order, I'm going to start with the spirit spells first. This is a new type of spell that we're going to see all kinds of dudes that are shamans who are able to cast these spells. The first one that we have is Spirit Guidance. This is a 6 of hearts. It's 1 to play. It's a spirit. It has Noon Spirit 7 boot. Discard a card to draw a card. And then it has Noon Spirit 10 boot. If this shaman is not at your home, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. I just got done talking about how it's hard to draw and filter cards in Doomtown. And here's going to be a pretty easy way to do it. You probably just want to have like 1 or 2 of these, and you're going to be able to use this to locate cards in your deck that maybe you're not playing as many copies of. So like dudes that you play 1 of that are really essential, maybe deeds that are important, things like that. This is going to be really nice to help you find those and really consistently is going to provide you with some sort of bonus. I really like this spell. The next spirit is Spirit Dance. This is an 8 of hearts. It's 2 to play. It's a spirit. Shootout Spirit 10 boot. A 2-stud nature spirit token enters play and joins your posse. This is not blowing me away, but it certainly seems playably good. The thing I'm not crazy about is, while it is a way to get a recurring source of strong token dudes that are going to help you win fights, it has the Spirit 10, which is potentially going to be a little difficult, and it also costs 2 to play. So there's going to be quite a bit of not only deck building, but monetary setup involved with getting this card to work. But then once you get it set up, it's going to be a much better token generation effect than basically any other token card in the game. This is a very easy way to get tokens turn after turn, and potentially even more than once in a turn with the right card effects. I don't know, this is okay. It's not blowing me away, but I definitely think it's going to be good enough if you're doing the shaman strategy. Next up, we have the first of the totems, and I want to quickly go through the rules for totems. Unlike regular spirits, when you play a totem, it doesn't get attached to your shaman. Instead, you attach it to a location that you control. Now, you do have to have an unbooted shaman there, but once you play the totem down, any shaman can use the location, even if it's not your totem. So as long as you are at a location with a totem, you can use it. So this first totem is called Spirit Trail. It's a 10 of hearts, it's 0 to play. It's a spirit totem. This location is adjacent to each other location that has a spirit trail attached. Noon Spirit 6 boot. Move your dude from this location without booting and even if booted. This has some interesting symmetry with the other 10 of hearts movement spells. Both Shadow Walk and Walk the Path are both 10 of hearts and are movement-oriented spells. This one's quite a bit different, though. I really like this Noon Spirit 6 thing, the ability to just attach this to one of the deeds that's adjacent to your home, so you can pretty easily move from your home to that deed and then basically anywhere without ever having to worry about either going to the town square or booting. That seems pretty critical, especially in an era with lots of paralysis mark and stuff like that. Now, this adjacency thing, I think can matter. I think the main thing I'm seeing with that is that it's going to make locations that you want to defend a little easier to defend, because if you have to, you can boot dudes in to join posses at fights there. There might be a few other things that you can do with it, but for the most part, I'm not seeing the adjacency thing mattering quite as much as this Noon boot thing. All around, this seems like a pretty decent addition to the arsenal, and I really, really like the way that these totems work. Next up is Many Speak as One. This is a Jack of Hearts. It's 1 to play. It's a spirit. It has Noon Spirit 9 boot, a 1 influence ancestor spirit token, enters play at this location. One thing I noticed right away is that the ancestor spirit token in the box has additional text. First of all, the ancestor spirit is a stud, which is pretty sweet. And also it says, remove this token from the game if it leaves this location or at the end of the turn. So that's obviously a pretty big limitation on this thing. You can't move around with the ancestor spirit tokens. This might be a little cumbersome to use offensively, since you're going to have to roll up on some location, then use this spell at noon. I could see this being pretty useful, though, for controlling your own locations, or just for getting an extra influence for the end of turn so that you don't lose the game. This isn't blowing me away, but it does seem like it could have some decent uses, and this is going to be an all-around okay card to add to the mix. The last spirit is the Pack Awakens. This is a Queen of Hearts. It's 1 to play. It's a spirit totem. Token dudes at this location gain the Harrowed keyword. Shootout Spirit 8 boot. A 2-stud nature spirit token enters play, booted, and joins your posse. This is an interesting card. I'm not sure if it's going to be fantastic, but it does some cool stuff. You're going to get to generate these 2-stud dudes that are harrowed, and then you're going to potentially be able to use them as a shooter or just to absorb some casualties. It's going to make it a lot harder to fight at that location for your opponent. This seems reasonably decent. Again, it's not really blowing my mind, but it does seem like it's going to be nice for securing a specific location. Before we get to the dudes, there's one goods card that we need to cover still. This is the Idol of Telazol Total. This is a Jack of Hearts. It's 2 to play. It's a mystical goods. During high noon, this dude has +2 influence. Then it has noon boot. Choose a card that you own that is attached to a location. Attach it legally to a deed you control. Well, I'm certainly not impressed with this thing, but I do think that it's cool to have this kind of effect in the card pool. Being able to move your totems around certainly gives you a lot more flexibility. If they were just fixed to a location, it would be a lot harder to adapt as your deed line evolves throughout the course of the game. The +2 influence during high noon, that's definitely going to matter the most for controlling deeds. It doesn't last long enough to check for the scoring at the end of the turn and that kind of stuff. You could also use abilities that key off of influence, though I'm not immediately thinking of any that you'd want to use in the Eagle Wardens. Now we're at the meat and potatoes of this new faction, and that's going to be the dudes. We're going to kick it off with Butch Dubois. This is an ace of spades. He's 2 draw, 0 influence, 3 to play with no upkeep. He's a grifter and he's shaman 0. React boot. At the start of the game, you may look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You may reveal a spirit or a tire from those cards to shuffle your play hand into your deck and take those cards into your play hand. Otherwise, return the cards to your deck in the same order. So this guy is kind of a variant on the Travis Moon theme. He's going to let us potentially mulligan our hand for another hand that we get to see before we make the decision to mulligan. That's pretty cool. He's also got these 2 bullets just like Travis. He does cost 3, unlike Travis, and he's got a much weaker value as well. But as part of the trade-off, we're going to get Shaman 0. This guy's not blowing me away, but you're almost certainly going to be playing a bunch of spirits in your deck, since those are the spells that the shamans cast. So it seems pretty easy to me to pull this off, and I like this sort of variant on Travis, where you get to look at both hands and decide which one you'd rather play with. The next dude is Masato. He's a 3 of spades. He's 1 draw, 1 influence, 3 to play with no upkeep. He's a shaman 0. He has noon. Move Masato to a location where there is a totem. This is maybe not the most exciting dude in the faction, but I think he's certainly starting posse material. Low cost, no upkeep, still worth an influence. He's going to have this low-level casting ability and a pretty useful moving around ability. I think that if you're playing the totems, this is probably somebody that you're going to start in your posse. Otherwise, though, the guy's probably going to sit in your box. For 3 cost, we have quite a few good neutral dudes that we could play if we're not doing anything with totems. And he's a low pull, so you're probably not going to want him in your deck if you're casting spells. The next dude is Marsha Ridge. She's a 4 of spades. She's 0 draw, 2 influence, 2 to play with 1 upkeep. While she's in the town square and you have more influence there than each other player, you may use controller abilities on adjacent deeds as if you controlled them. This dude is absolutely bonkers. First of all, she's a low cost. She does have that 1 upkeep, but she's 2 influence. It's pretty hard to get 2 influence for 2 cost, with the exception of maybe like Jake Smiley. But this trait, I think, is really the thing that pushes her over the edge. This is a huge deterrent for your opponent if you're able to control the town square. And just her being there is going to give you 2 influence towards her abilities condition. Man, this is so good. Not only are you going to be able to occasionally steal awesome abilities from them, like Circle M, Carter's Bounties, things like that, you're also going to deter them from wanting to play deeds with these abilities if you control the town square. It's going to be so much harder for them to play down new deeds with powerful abilities if you have the town square controlled. And I think that's a really interesting and good dynamic. I think you're going to play this dude in basically every starting posse for this faction. The next dude is Richard Faulkner. He's a 5 of spades. He's 0 draw, 3 influence. He's 6 to play with no upkeep, and that's all he does. There's not a whole lot to say about this guy. The biggest thing I would point out is this is the only dude that has 3 influence with no upkeep. Now, he is expensive, he doesn't really do anything, he's going to be terrible at combat, but this will be a really good card to play in your deck if you just want to have a little influence boost so you don't lose the game. I could also maybe see starting this guy, but I feel like the fact that he doesn't do anything is probably going to hold you back, unless you're trying to do kind of a mass deeds landslide style or something like that, where you're not really concerned about your dudes doing a whole lot, you just want to have enough influence that you don't lose the game. The next dude is Lydia Barehands. She's a 6 of spades, 0 draw, 2 influence, 5 to play for no upkeep. She's a shaman 0. She has resolution boot a spirit on Lydia. One of your dudes gets the harrowed keyword until the end of the shootout. I'm a little bit underwhelmed with this resolution boot ability. It seems to me like a lot of your spirits are totems they're going to attach to deeds, and then the ones that you do attach to her, you're probably going to want to use because they're strong abilities. So I don't know how often you would rather boot a spell to get harrowed rather than just do whatever the spell says. That said, she is pretty good in terms of stats, right? She's 2 influence, no upkeep. That's pretty much always good. And the 5 is going to be a lot of your starting Ghost Rock, but it's a doable amount of your starting Ghost Rock. I don't know, this dude's okay. I'm not really that excited about it. I think maybe if you were doing a deck that didn't have a ton of the totems, it instead played more of the spirits that attach to your dudes, this might be something a little bit more permissible. Or I could just see playing her as a way to get 2 influence in your starting posse. Interacts well with the outfit power, and if you started her and Marsha, you could have a pretty good array of dudes to boot with the outfit power. The next dude is Jackson Trouble. He's a 7 of spades, 1 stud, 1 influence, 4 to play with 1 upkeep. React: after Jackson moves to or from an out-of-town location, unboot him. I'm not sure that I really like this guy. I just don't see where he's going to fit into what you're doing with this faction. His stats are okay, but I think the 1 upkeep really kills him. And this ability is okay, but it seems to me like there's already a lot better movement cheating stuff, especially since we have Spirit Trail in faction. It seems a lot better to use Spirit Trail to get out of town than have some dude in your deck with this kind of narrow ability. I don't know, I just don't see where this guy's going to fit in. I could see maybe playing him out of faction in a couple decks, but he's just kind of underwhelming. The next dude is Black Elk. He's a 9 of spades, he's 0 draw, 0 influence, 3 to play with no upkeep, and he has Shaman 3. Whether or not this guy's any good, I really like the art on this. This is a really good looking card, probably one of my favorite Doomtown artworks, period. This guy's going to be a reasonably high value, high shaman skilled dude for a low cost and no upkeep. That alone makes him considerable. The main thing that I'm having issue with is that right now the pool of spirits that we have to choose from, the highest they go is 10. And it seems to me like it's pretty easy to build a draw structure that's based around 10-ish value. So I'm not sure how often you're going to need Shaman 3. This would benefit immensely from some sort of X spell, kind of like Paralysis Mark or Soul Blast, that kind of thing. I don't know, I really like this card. I think maybe he could make more sense in the future as we get more spirits. I think as it is, you're probably going to be able to limp by with some of the lower shaman value dudes and get more out of them than just a high skill. The next dude is Bloody Teeth. He's a 10 of spades, 1 stud, 1 influence, 6 to play with 1 upkeep. He's a harrowed dude, and he has Shaman 1. This guy seems like a quintessential put him in your deck because he matches your draw structure and he's an affordable dude that'll have a decent impact later in the game. I can't really see starting this guy over some of the Shaman 0 options. That 1 upkeep is really going to kill him in the starting posse, and he's going to eat up all the Ghost Rock for very little payout. He only has 1 influence, so that also really keeps him from being in your starting posse, even though you have several decent dudes with high influence. I definitely think this is the type of guy where if you're playing Spirit Trail in your deck, you're going to play some copies of this guy because you're going to have 10s as part of your draw structure. You're going to draw this guy later on when you have some excess Ghost Rock, and you're going to be able to drop him down as another spellcaster, another guy that can use totems, and he can absorb a little bit more on the casualties. The next dude is Three-Eyed Hawk. She's a 10 of spades, 3 stud, 2 influence. 7 to play with 2 upkeep. She has Shaman 1. After you attach a sidekick to her from your hand, gain a Ghost Rock, and sidekicks attached to her can be aced to cover 2 casualties. Well, here's another 10 that's going to match your Spirit Trails and has massive stats, 3 stud, 2 influence. That's awesome. She's also a Shaman, so she can use totems and do other neat stuff with spells. Unfortunately, I think this sidekick thing, which is the coolest aspect of her by far, is pretty useless. I'm not sure which sidekick you would want to play. Scoop Hound is probably my favorite of all the sidekicks, but it's also 10 of hearts. So you'd much rather play 4 Spirit Trails than have to, lose some Spirit Trails to get some Scoop Hounds just to get a little bit more value out of a dude that you're probably going to be playing in the late game. It seems to me like there just needs to be a new sidekick to make this work, especially a sidekick that's a high pull value but doesn't necessarily conflict with some of your spells. I don't know, I'm not really seeing how you're going to get value out of the sidekick thing, but I think you're probably still going to play her just because the 10 is a good value, and she's got massive stats, and she's reasonably affordable and still is a shaman. The next dude is Sarah Mioquini. She's a jack of spades, 3 draw, 0 influence, 3 to play with 1 upkeep. She's Shaman 1, and she has Shootout. If a dude in your posse has 3 or more influence, or a spirit is at the shootout location, Sarah joins the posse and becomes a stud. The first thing I wanted to point out with her is that I think it's a little confusing, her reference to spirits. She's talking about the spells, not the tokens. Even though the tokens have the word spirit in their name, they don't count as spirits. So she's going to have to move to a location that either has a totem or has a dude with a spirit attached. That said, that's really not much of a requirement. This definitely seems like starting dude material to me. That 1 upkeep does kind of suck, but she's cheap, and she's most of the time going to be a 3 stud in a shootout. It seems to me like having spirits is not going to be much of a requirement if you're doing a pretty heavy shaman thing. This is a pretty nice way to round out some of the dudes. She's got a high value, so if you wanted to put her in your deck, you could. But if you just needed some stud body there, she is able to do that, and she also has Shaman. Next up is Smiling Frog. He's a jack of spades, 1 stud, 1 influence, 6 to play with no upkeep. He has Noon, discard a card to give him +1 bullets. If the card was a spirit, he gets +2 bullets instead. Here's just another decent dude that's probably going to go in your deck as part of your draw structure. The jack thing matches our mini speak as 1, and it also could match some other decent cards like Hex Slinging or things like that. I think all around this thing's probably going to be an in-deck card. I don't really see wanting to spend 6 of your starting Ghost Rock on this dude, even though he can potentially be a 3 stud. Early in the game, I don't think you're going to want to discard your spirits. You'd much rather play them to the table. The no upkeep thing is really nice, but I don't really see it being worth starting posse material. I think this is going to be a much better dude just putting him in your deck. The next dude is Laughing Crow. She's a queen of spades, 0 draw, 3 influence, 5 to play with 3 upkeep. She's Shaman 4, and she has Noon. Reveal the top 2 cards of your deck. You may attach any revealed spirits, paying all cost, discard the rest. Like I said with Black Elk, I don't really see Shaman 4 and just these high Shaman values really being worth it at the moment. We really need some X thing like Soul Blast or whatever, but I do think that this chick is probably going to be in your deck as part of your draw structure or just as a dude to play down. 3 influence is going to be really nice in a pinch. At 5 cost, it's hard to beat that. Now, she does have a high upkeep, but I think as long as you have an established board position, not going to be a huge requirement. And this noon thing is pretty sweet. I think it's probably going to come late enough in the game where it's not going to be all that great, but it is cool. And Shaman 4, I think, could have a bigger payout if we see more spirits later on. The last dude is Chief Steven 7 Eagles. He's a king of spades, 4 draw, 4 influence, 10 to play with 3 upkeep. He's a Shaman 2. If your outfit is the Eagle Wardens, his cost is reduced by 1 for each card attached to any location. Then he has Noon Boot. While at the town square, he's worth 1 control point for each card attached to deeds you control. Man, this guy is such a good finisher for the totem decks. I really like this trait that we first saw with Tao Chi Chao. This thing that if you are playing him in faction, you're going to reduce his cost based on some game context. That's really cool. I really like that mechanic. This Noon Boot thing, I think, could easily result in him being worth like 3, 4, maybe even more control points. On top of that, he's 4 influence. That's huge. He does also have a bunch of bullets, which is pretty cool. I mean, they are draw bullets, but he does have 4 bullets. Man, this guy's cool. I really like him as a finisher. And in general, I'm just a big fan of dudes that have some sort of conditional control point thing. I think that's an area of the design space that I'd like to see more cards developed for. That's going to do it for my Immovable Object Unstoppable Force review. I think it's fair to say that the Bandits are stronger than the Eagle Wardens just out of this box. I think that the Eagle Wardens have a lot of areas of the card pool where they need some more stuff to make them as strong as they could be, especially the high value Shaman abilities. To me, those just really need some other spirit to really be as good as they could be. I think you could say a similar thing about Masato and Chief Steven. Both of those are going to be way better if we get some more totems. Just in general, I feel like the Eagle Wardens need some more cards and just some more fleshing out, but they've got a really good foundation to build on, and they definitely have some monster starting dudes with Marsha Ridge and Butch Dubois. Thanks for watching this review. If you liked it, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and you push the button that looks like a thumbs up, and I'll see you again pretty soon for some more Doomtown stuff.